The cold order. The engine of Jalen's cargo ship hummed low as it floated in deep space. He sat in the pilot seat, staring at the blinking red message on his comm screen. It was a direct order from the Trade Command. Deliver biological cargo to Station 9. No questions. Payment? 12,000 credits. Jalen didn't like vague orders, but he needed the money. Ever since he left Earth's military, jobs were hard to find. Now he flew an old cargo ship carrying whatever they told him. Usually it was scrap, supplies, sometimes livestock. But this order felt different. Strange. He walked down the cold metal hallway of his ship and reached the cargo bay. 3 long crates were locked in the center. Heavy, no labels, just codes and a blinking light on each one. Jalen bent down and activated the first lock. The crate hissed and slowly opened. Inside, curled in a corner, was a woman, clearly not human. Her skin was pale blue, eyes bright gold. Her clothes were torn, and her wrists showed red marks from tight cuffs. She looked up at him, her face blank, but her eyes were full of fear. Jalen stepped back, shocked. This wasn't cargo. This was a prisoner. He opened the second crate. Inside was a young alien boy, maybe 5 years old, thin, shivering. The third crate had a smaller girl, barely able to lift her head. She clung to a piece of cloth like it was her only treasure. Jalen's stomach turned. "This is wrong," he whispered. He pulled out a blanket and placed it over the boy. The child flinched at first but didn't move away. Jalen offered water from his flask. The boy stared at it, then slowly took it. His little hands trembled. The woman didn't speak a word. She sat still, holding the girl in her arms. Jalen noticed her legs were shaking and her lips were dry. He placed a food packet near her feet and backed away. "Eat. You need strength," he said softly. Still, no reply. But her eyes followed his every move. Jalen returned to the control room and slammed his fist on the console. He opened the secure channel to command. "What kind of job is this? You didn't tell me it was living beings. This is illegal." The reply came cold and fast. "They are declassified life forms, trafficked per Sector 22 law. Deliver as ordered, or be marked disobedient." Disobedient. That word meant blacklisted, maybe worse. The last pilot who disobeyed Trade Command was never seen again. Jalen sat back in his chair. His heart beat faster. He could deliver them and get the money. Pretend he never saw their faces. Let the system eat them alive, or... He looked at the security feed. The little boy was now leaning against the crate wall, asleep. The mother was feeding the girl slowly, piece by piece with her own hands. Her own share of food untouched. She looked like a woman who had lost everything, but still refused to let her children break. Jalen closed his eyes. He remembered the war, the camps, the sound of crying children, the empty look in the eyes of the ones no one saved. And now, he had a choice. The system said they were cargo, but his heart knew better. They were a mother and her children. Jalen stood and whispered to himself, "I didn't sign up to be a monster." He opened the locker, pulled out 3 warm blankets, 2 spare food rations, and a small light globe. He returned to the cargo bay and placed everything inside the crates. Then gently he spoke to the woman. "My name is Jalen. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help. But you need to trust me." The woman didn't answer. But this time, her eyes softened. She held her children closer, but she nodded. Barely. Jalen stepped back and locked the cargo bay door, but not to trap them, to protect them. He returned to the control room and stared at the blinking star chart. Station 9 was 1 day away, but if he took the long route to the green moon of Astara, they could disappear. No more orders, just freedom. He reached toward the nav panel, hand shaking. This was not just a course change. It was a life change. Jalen whispered to the stars, "They want me to sell them, but I'm going to give them a family instead." And with that, he changed the path of the ship, Forever. Jalen flew the ship through the silent black of space, but his mind was louder than ever. He had done something dangerous. He disobeyed a direct order from Trade Command. He was now a criminal in their eyes. But when he thought of the mother's eyes, her tired, silent strength, he knew he had made the right choice. The alien woman hadn't spoken a single word since he opened the crate. Not one. But her eyes, they were sharp, always watching. Not in fear anymore, but with caution, like she was waiting to see what kind of man Jalen truly was. The children stayed close to her. The boy followed his mother's silence. He had bright orange eyes and a small scar on his neck. The little girl was the smallest and weakest, but her tiny hands would grip Jalen's shirt every time he came close. Maybe from fear, maybe from hope. Jalen cooked a small meal in the ship's galley, simple rice and protein paste. He placed 3 bowls near them on the floor. The children ate slowly, carefully, like they weren't sure if it was real. The woman only fed them, not herself. Again, he noticed the mother's lips were cracked. She was clearly starving herself. "You need to eat too," Jalen said softly. No answer. She looked away. Jalen sighed and left the room, but he set up a camera feed so he could watch from the control room. Hours passed. He saw her finally pick up the food and eat a little when the children were asleep. Only then. Like she didn't think she deserved it. That night he brought a translator device. He gently placed it on the floor near her. "If you don't want to talk, it's okay. But if you ever need to say something, this will help." She didn't touch it, but she didn't push it away either. Days passed. They kept traveling deeper into unregistered space. He was heading to Astara's green moon, where there were no Trade Command patrols. The place was quiet, half abandoned. It was their only hope. He did his best to make the children smile. He showed the boy how to press buttons on the control panel, safe ones. The boy looked serious but curious. The little girl drew pictures on the metal walls using his old chalk sticks. Jalen saw something strange as the days passed. The woman was healing, slowly. The bruises faded. Her eyes became less tired. Her back stood straighter. But still, she didn't speak. Not one word. Not even her name. One night, Jalen sat near them and tried again. "Can I ask something?" he said. No reply. "Why won't you speak?" "I know you can. I hear you humming to your daughter at night when you think I'm asleep." The woman's hand tightened around her daughter's shoulder. Jalen continued. "I don't want to force you, but I want to know your name, something, anything, just so I can call you something other than alien mother." He smiled a little. "I've been calling the boy Tiny Trouble and the girl Little Sun in my head." The woman looked at him for a long time. Then very slowly, she reached toward the translator. She tapped it with one slender finger. It glowed blue. A soft female voice echoed from it. "Speech, not silence, is dangerous," it said. Jalen leaned in. "Dangerous?" The woman tapped again. Every word was punished. Silence kept us alive. Jalen's chest ached at the thought. He asked gently, "What is your name?" She didn't answer that question yet, but she spoke again through the translator. "My children are not weapons, not threats, just children." Jalen nodded. "I know." "Why help us?" she asked. Her golden eyes studied him hard now. "You lose everything." "For what?" He sat down on the cold floor, resting his back against the wall. "I was a soldier," he said quietly. "I saw families ripped apart. I saw people left behind like trash. I promised myself, if I ever had the power to stop it, I would." He looked at her. "I don't care what species you are. You're a mother." "That's all I need to know." Silence returned, but not the same kind. This silence was heavy, full of thought. Finally, the woman touched the translator again. "My name is Verena." Jalen smiled gently. Nice to meet you, Verena. The little boy crawled to his mother's lap, sleepy. She held him close. For the first time, she let out a small sigh, a sound of peace, not fear. That night, Jalen returned to the control room. He didn't know what future waited for them, but one thing was clear now. The woman who would not speak had finally begun to trust him, and that trust was worth more than any reward. The stars outside blinked softly as Jalen leaned back in the pilot chair. The ship floated through an empty corridor of space, silent and slow. Inside, all seemed calm. Verena and the children were resting, but Jalen's mind was not at peace. Something still bothered him. Why had Verena been treated like cargo? Why had command marked them as non-essential, even dangerous? And why was there no real record of them in the cargo manifest? Just a strange encrypted file titled Asset Class 7. Jalen was no tech expert, but years in the military had taught him how to dig deeper than most. He opened the ship's internal data logs and traced the delivery order. The moment he tried to access the encrypted file, the console flashed red. Unauthorized access detected. This file is classified by Galactic Trade Law. Level Crimson. Crimson level? That was used for war weapons, not people. Jalen stared at the screen. He took a deep breath, then opened a secret folder on his ship's system. It was an old military patch tool, something he'd kept hidden for emergencies. He ran it slowly, carefully. The system began to crack the lock, layer by layer. It took 20 minutes. But finally, the file opened. His hands froze on the controls as the data spilled out in front of him. Verena's real identity. She wasn't just any alien mother. She was once a high diplomat of the Sarathi Dominion, a peaceful alien nation that once worked closely with humans. Her diplomatic rank had granted her intergalactic travel rights, command over trade lanes, and even access to secret interspecies agreements. But after a border attack destroyed the Sarathi capital, her people had scattered. The few who survived were hunted, some sold, others killed. Her name had been removed from public records, her title erased. The bounty on her head was placed not by criminals, but by a shadow part of Trade Command itself. The file even contained a surveillance photo. Verena standing beside her partner, clearly a Sarathi general, and two infants, still wrapped in silver cloth. A note below read, "Status widow, general deceased. Offspring marked for containment. Eliminate if recovery fails." Jalen's heart dropped. They didn't just want to sell her. They wanted her silenced. The children, too. He turned off the screen and sat in silence. He felt a wave of cold fear creep up his back. If someone knew he had this file open, even for a second, they'd come for him. He had crossed a line that no one returned from. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Verena stood at the door, her arms folded around her body. She had sensed something. "You found it," she said softly. Jalen turned. "You knew?" She nodded slowly. "I saw your screen from the hall. I know what you saw." He didn't speak. He waited. Verena walked closer, eyes tired but clear. "I was not always a prisoner. Once I spoke for peace. I sat at tables with human leaders. I believed in unity." She looked down. "But power is dangerous. And peace can be sold." Jalen looked into her golden eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head. "Because I thought, if I said who I was, you'd turn me in for the bounty. 12,000 credits for me, 6 for each child." He frowned. "You think I'd trade your lives for that?" "I didn't know you then," she said quietly. "But now..." She sat beside him on the floor. "Now I believe you're different." They sat in silence. Then Jalen said, "The file said something else. That your mate, he died protecting you?" Verena's jaw tensed. She nodded. "He stayed behind while I ran, with the children. He held the enemy back. He knew we were targets because of my role, so he gave his life." A tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. "I made it to a refugee ship. But that shipment was already bought by Trade Command. We were taken, labeled as cargo. I have not spoken my name since that day. Jalen clenched his fists. You were supposed to help build peace, and they turned you into a prisoner. Verena met his gaze. And now, you've risked your life for someone like me. Jalen nodded. Not someone like you, exactly you, because this galaxy needs people like you more than ever. She looked away for a moment as if unsure what to say. Then she whispered, If we survive this, I will return the favor. I will speak your name to every council that still listens. Jalen smiled faintly. Let's just focus on surviving first. They both looked at the star map. Estara's green moon was 2 days away now. A quiet place, but not safe. Trade Command wouldn't give up easily. And now, they weren't just carrying refugees. They were carrying a secret that could change everything. Jalen stood in the control room, staring at the ship's star map. The route to Estara's green moon was plotted and ready, but a blinking red alert pulsed in the corner of the screen. A Trade Command drone ship had entered the outer system. It was scanning all vessels, checking IDs, looking for him. He had known this day would come. They were not just running anymore. They were being hunted. Jalen pressed a button locking down all ship systems. He powered off the exterior lights and masked the heat signature. The old ship groaned as it shifted to stealth mode. Verena stepped into the room, holding her son in her arms. The girl followed, dragging her small blanket, her bright eyes full of sleep. What is it? Verena asked. Jalen didn't look away from the screen. A drone ship. They're scanning every vessel, looking for us. Verena said nothing for a moment. Then softly, Then we must disappear. I plan to, Jalen replied. But this changes the timing. If we wait too long, they'll close the outer ring. No ship will pass through without a full scan. And if we leave now? She asked. Jalen looked at her. We'll be flying straight through open space, no cover. If they catch us, they won't ask questions. Verena nodded slowly, her expression calm. Then we leave now. He was surprised by her strength. She didn't beg. She didn't fear. She stood tall, like someone who had already died once and was now ready for anything. Jalen powered up the engines, overriding the stealth mode. The ship roared to life, lights flickering. He plotted a detour, an old smuggler's lane through an asteroid belt. Dangerous, but unmonitored. As the engines burned and the ship turned toward the escape route, Jalen looked at the children. They didn't cry. They just held tightly to their mother's arms. Verena knelt beside them. She spoke to them in her native tongue, soft, musical, but full of command. Then she stood, walked to Jalen, and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Thank you, she said. He nodded. We're not safe yet. The ship jolted forward, diving into the belt. Jagged rocks spun all around them. The autopilot gave up. Jalen had to fly manually. One wrong turn, and the ship would be torn apart. But the drone ship was getting closer behind them. Its signal flashed again. Unidentified ship. Halt immediately. You are in violation of Trade Law 49B. Respond or be engaged. Jalen didn't answer. He pressed deeper into the belt. The ship scraped against a massive rock, shaking the entire cabin. Sparks flew from the side panels. Verena braced herself near the children, shielding them with her body. The drone ship fired a warning shot. Blue plasma. It barely missed the rear thruster. Jalen swore and pulled the lever hard, flipping the ship under a spinning asteroid. The move worked. The drone lost sight of them for just a few seconds. That was all Jalen needed. He slammed the afterburners and sped forward deeper into the belt. He reached an old beacon tower, abandoned now, and shut down everything. Total silence. No light, no signal. They waited in the dark. 1 minute, 2, 10. Finally, the scanner showed the drone ship drifting away. Scanning in the wrong direction. They had survived. For now. Jalen let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He looked back. Verena was holding the girl who had fallen asleep in her arms. The boy sat beside her, drawing something in the dust on the floor. 3 figures, holding hands. Jalen smiled faintly. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were becoming something more. He walked quietly to the food shelf and brought out 3 warm packs, handed one to Verena. "We'll rest here a few hours, then go to Astara." She nodded and took the food. Jalen sat beside the boy and pointed at the drawing. "Who's this?" he asked. The boy hesitated, then touched the first figure. "Mama." He touched the second. "Me." He touched the third, and smiled. "You." Jalen's heart tightened. He looked at Verena. She didn't speak, but her eyes were full of quiet, warmth, the kind only a mother gives when she finally feels safe. "I've made my decision," Jalen said suddenly. "When we land on Astara, I'm not just dropping you off, I'm staying." Verena looked surprised. "You would stay with us?" He nodded. "If you'll have me." She looked down at her children, then back at him. "You gave us a chance to live. That makes you more than a protector," she whispered. "It makes you family." In the quiet hum of the hidden ship, surrounded by stars and stone, a new family was forming, one that no law could command. The ship descended through clouds thick with blue mist. Beneath them stretched a vast emerald jungle, untouched and alive. Birds with glowing feathers flew in flocks above the trees. Beasts roared in the distance. It was wild, yes, but quiet. There were no satellites, no patrols, no cities. Astara's green moon was forgotten by most of the galaxy. That made it perfect for Jalen. He landed the ship on a soft patch of moss between 2 tall trees, their trunks wide as buildings. Steam hissed as the engine cooled. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the ramp lowered with a low creak. The air was warm, fresh, earthy. Jalen stepped out first. His boots sank a little into the moss. He looked around cautiously. No signs of life nearby. Good. Verena followed, her children holding each hand. They stared at the open jungle like it was the first real thing they'd seen in years. The boy broke into a smile. The little girl touched a glowing flower and giggled when it blinked closed. For the first time, they were free to breathe. Jalen pulled his old tool bag from the ship. "We need shelter. This place is peaceful, but it still has storms and beasts." Verena nodded. "I'll help." They worked together without speaking much. Verena had strong arms and sharp eyes. She helped Jalen cut long branches with a plasma saw, while the children gathered dry leaves and smooth stones. Jalen built a curved roof out of metal panels from the ship's storage, layering them with bark and vines for camouflage. The shelter wasn't pretty, but it was strong, hidden, safe. As the sun began to fall, they lit a fire inside a small ring of stones. Jalen handed out food packs, but Verena surprised him. She had gathered some local fruits. She tested each one for poison, with a scanner before offering them to the children. The girl ate happily. The boy looked up at Jalen and handed him one. It was sweet, juicy, like mango mixed with mint. "You two should rest," Jalen said after the meal. "I'll keep first watch." Verena didn't argue. She laid down between her children and curled, her arms around them. Jalen sat near the doorway, staring into the darkness, listening to the night creatures sing. But he didn't feel alone. In the quiet, he realized something strange. He felt at peace. For the first time since he left Earth, this wasn't just a hiding spot anymore. It was a beginning. The next morning, they started settling in. Jalen rigged solar panels from the ship to power a small heater and light globe. He taught the boy how to hammer nails and carve notches. The girl followed Jalen around, mimicking everything he did. She even tried to hold a wrench with her tiny hands. Verena watched it all with soft eyes. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was the kind that made Jalen stop what he was doing just to remember it. She began speaking more now, Not long speeches, but words that mattered. Thank you. Careful with the blade. This fruit is safe. But one evening after the children fell asleep, she said something different. You saved our lives. But more than that, you gave us something we thought was lost. Jalen looked at her. What's that? He asked. She stared at the fire. Hope. He said nothing, just nodded. Days passed. Then a week. The jungle grew familiar. The creatures kept their distance, the children laughed more. The little girl started calling Jalen Jay, her own version of his name. He didn't correct her, but on the 8th day, peace broke. The ship's silent. Alarm blinked red. A tracker had pinged. Trade Command had activated a long-range beacon, one connected to the stolen ship ID. Someone knew Jalen had landed. Somewhere. He rushed to Verena, who was feeding the children by the stream. We have to prepare, he said. She stood quickly, alarm flashing in her eyes. What happened? They might be searching, we don't have long. They spent the next hours preparing escape paths through the jungle. Jalen gave the children locator beads, small stones that glowed softly when held by family. Verena stored weapons beneath a tree, hidden under leaves. That night they didn't sleep deeply, but when the fire was low and the jungle was quiet, Jalen noticed something. Even in fear, the family stayed together. Verena no longer looked like a prisoner. She looked like a mother protecting her world. And the children? They didn't run in fear. They stood behind Jalen. He wasn't just a smuggler anymore. He was theirs. And they were his. The morning came too quiet. The birds didn't sing. The breeze was still. Jalen's eyes opened fast. Something was wrong. He grabbed the small scanner and stepped out of the shelter. The screen blinked once. Then again. A ship had entered the moon's atmosphere. Not trade. Command, but worse. A private bounty hunter. The ship's ID was marked in red. The tag read, licensed for lethal collection. He hurried back to the shelter. They found us, he said in a low voice. Verena didn't panic. She stood, grabbed her children, and nodded once. We go. No, Jalen said. We don't run. Not yet. He reached into the hidden crate, under the tree. Inside were his old Earth military weapons, a stun rifle, flash charges, and a single plasma grenade. He handed Verena the rifle. She took it like it was part of her body. Smooth. Natural. I thought you were a diplomat, Jalen said. I was, she replied. But I was raised by warriors. The children were placed in the hiding tunnel they had dug behind the shelter. Covered in moss, it led deep into the forest. Jalen kissed the girl's head. The boy didn't cry, but his eyes were wide with fear. Follow the light stones, Jalen said. We'll come for you. The children nodded. Verena knelt down and whispered to them in her language. Then she stood taller than before. The hunter's ship landed nearby. The ground shook. Trees swayed. The beast had arrived. Jalen and Verena took cover behind the shelter. Minutes passed. Then footsteps. Not heavy, but slow. Confident. A voice called out, Traitor Jalen, you've taken something that doesn't belong to you. Jalen peeked out. The man was human. Tall, scarred face, long rifle on his back. He wore bounty armor, gray and red, with skull marks painted on the shoulder. He looked calm, like this was just another job. I don't see how you sleep at night, Jalen shouted. The hunter chuckled. On a soft bed, paid for by people like you. You're not taking them, Jalen growled. The hunter stepped forward, aiming the rifle. Try and stop me. Verena stood up behind the tree, her rifle aimed at his chest. I suggest you leave, she said calmly. The hunter tilted his head. Ah, the queen herself speaks. He fired without warning. Jalen pulled Verena down just in time. The plasma bolt hit the tree, burning through the bark. Jalen rolled out and threw a flash charge. White light exploded across the jungle floor. The hunter stumbled. Verena fired twice, hitting the man's armor. Sparks flew, but he didn't fall. He's reinforced, she warned. Jalen grabbed a sharp metal rod and moved around the shelter. He reached the man from the side and tackled him, slamming him into the dirt. They fought hard. Fists, blades, grit. Jalen's shoulder cracked, but he didn't stop. He roared, "You want to take a mother from her children? Over my dead body." Hunter grabbed his knife, slashed Jalen's arm. Verena screamed and fired again, this time at the hunter's leg. He fell with a curse. Jalen didn't wait. He pulled the plasma grenade from his belt, pushed it against the man's chest and armed it. "You move," Jalen said, breathing hard. "We both die." The hunter froze. His fingers twitched. Verena stepped close and pressed the muzzle of her rifle to the man's forehead. "We're not your cargo," she whispered. "We're not your job. We're family." The hunter growled, "You're making a big mistake." "No," Jalen said. "You made the mistake. You came here." He reached down, took the hunter's tracker, and smashed it underfoot. Then slowly, he disarmed the grenade. The hunter was unconscious within seconds from a stun dart Verena fired into his neck. Jalen dragged him to the ship and locked him inside, setting the controls to autopilot. "Where will it go?" she asked. "Back to the trade station," Jalen said. "Let them deal with him. He failed. He'll be punished." As the hunter's ship lifted off, they both stood still, covered in dirt, bruised but breathing. Verena touched Jalen's arm gently. "You are hurt." He looked at the blood, shrugged. "It's nothing." She tore a piece of cloth from her sleeve and wrapped his wound. Her hands were soft, but sure. They returned to the hidden tunnel and pulled the children out. The little girl cried when she saw Jalen's wound. "I'm okay," he whispered, holding her close. The boy looked at Verena, then at Jalen. "Did you win?" Jalen smiled. "We did." That night they sat by the fire again. But this time, something had changed. They weren't hiding anymore. They had stood, fought, protected, together. Verena sat beside Jalen and looked up at the stars. "I don't have a home anymore," she said. He looked at her. "Neither do I." She reached out and took his hand. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we can build one here. With them. With you." Jalen looked at her, at the children resting near the warm fire, and whispered, "Yes. Let's build it. Together." The jungle glowed softly in the early morning light. A warm breeze carried the sound of distant birds, and the leaves above shimmered like green glass. Jalen stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the sun rise beyond the trees. His shoulder ached, his arm was bandaged, but his heart felt still, like the world had finally stopped spinning. Behind him, Verena was brushing the girl's hair with careful fingers, while the boy poked sticks into a fire, pretending he was guarding their tiny camp. There was no signal from Trade Command, no patrols in the sky, no threats, just peace. But even in peace, Jalen's thoughts were heavy. He had once been a soldier who followed orders, then a pilot who hauled dirty jobs for dirty money. He had lived by rules someone else wrote, until now. Now he had something worth protecting, something worth living for. And it wasn't just the woman who had trusted him. It was the small hands that gripped his shirt at night, the golden eyes that looked at him with quiet hope, the little voice that now called him Jay like it had always belonged to him. Verena stood and walked over, holding 2 wooden cups of hot leaf tea. She handed one to Jalen. "It's not earth coffee," she said, her voice gentle, "but it will warm you." He smiled. "Anything made by you is good." She sipped hers, watching him with a soft gaze. "The children asked me something last night." "Oh?" Jalen said, raising a brow. "They asked if you were going to leave one day." His hand paused mid-sip. Verena added, "I told them you wouldn't, but I also said only you could promise it." Jalen looked over at the children. The boy was teaching the girl how to stack stones like soldiers in formation. She was laughing, light, carefree. He took a deep breath. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I don't want to." Verena set her cup down. "You know, in my culture, family is not always by blood. It's by the strength of your choice. Who you stay with, who you fight for. Jalen nodded slowly. I'd like that, to be family, if you'll have me. She smiled, the kind that glowed brighter than the jungle sun. I already do. Later, that day they worked together to improve the shelter. Jalen reinforced the roof. Verena built a second sleeping space. They made a place for the children to play, cleared the weeds, and planted some of the glowing fruit seeds they had gathered. It was small, it was quiet, but it was home. Each evening, they gathered around the fire. The girl made songs out of nonsense, words. The boy asked Jalen to tell Earth stories about giant oceans and cities in the sky. He told them everything. But one night, Verena asked something he hadn't expected. Do you ever want to go back? To Earth? Jalen looked at the fire, thought deeply. I used to think I would, he said. But Earth isn't the same anymore. It's cold now, not in weather, but in hearts. He looked at her. This place, with you, feels more like Earth than Earth ever did. She took his hand gently. Then you are home. That night, as the fire dimmed and stars filled the sky, Verena lay beside him with her head on his shoulder. The children were curled beside them. All was still. Jalen whispered, I never thought this would be my life. Neither did I, she replied. But perhaps it was always waiting for us, we just had to find it. Days turned into weeks. Jalen built a signal blocker to keep them hidden. He planted more fruit trees. He taught the boy how to fish with traps. Verena taught Jalen how to read the sky by stars. She even painted a family crest on the shelter wall, 3 stars above a hand holding a flower. One day, the girl ran up with a broken stone in her hand. Fix it, she said. Jalen laughed and lifted her up. You break it, you fix it, little one. But you're the fixer, she giggled. He looked at Verena, who stood smiling in the sunlight. Maybe he was the fixer. He had fixed a ship, he had fixed a broken mission. He had helped fix a broken heart, but most of all, he had helped build a new kind of family. Not perfect, not easy, but real and strong. That night, as the wind blew soft and the stars burned bright, Jalen whispered to the children as they slept, No one will ever sell you again. No one will ever chain you. This is your life now. Free. Loved. Forever. And with Verena by his side, he closed his eyes. Finally home.